Chapter 16 It's Alive. So, what is the difference between a nuclear reactor and a nuclear bomb? In a nuclear reactor, the criticality has to be controlled, the atoms have to split in sequence. To keep the reactor at a critical level, one where the mass exists at a stable temperature, the core temperature has to be lowered and raised, which means it has to be kept at a slightly supercritical level. This is where the control rods and heavy water moderator come in, to prevent overheating by absorbing free neutrons. However, for a nuclear bomb to go off, the mass of the uranium has to become extremely supercritical so that all the U-235 atoms split at once, happening in around 1 microsecond. With only criticality information for uranium and some initial test results for perithnium to base their estimates on, Dr. Malberg expected the reactor to require heavy moderation if an extreme supercriticality was to be averted and a controlled reaction was achieved and maintained. Once stability was achieved, the power levels could be progressively increased to the estimated levels Die Glocke required for operation. As Heinrich orchestrated the initial withdrawal of the control rods, Dr. Malberg continued to stare through the control room window, a predator waiting to pounce on some unsuspecting prey. Dr. Malberg, Dr. Malberg! Heinrich repeated his request for his superior's attention. Breaking free of his concentration, Dr. Malberg turned. Yes, Heinrich, what is it? We already have 50% power. At this rate we can try Die Glocke in around 5 minutes. Excellent, Heinrich, proceed. Heinrich picked up a handset and gave orders to some distant, undoubtedly heavily dressed operator, to withdraw more of the control rods. The power gauges showed a comparable increase in power. Heinrich paused to report the situation. The increase in power appears to still be linear. Proceed, was his only reply. Once again the remote operator made a slight adjustment, and once again the power gauges responded in kind. Previously the uranium reactor had failed to achieve sufficient power to operate Die Glocke. The perithnium was only at 65% but had already exceeded uranium's 100% level. Sensing the moment had almost arrived, Dr. Malberg gave the order to further open up the reactor. 90%, Heinrich, 90%. Yes, sir, 90%. Stand by for power transfer. Dr. Malberg's hand silently reached for the large metal ratchet lock lever that controlled the flow of power to Die Glocke. One simple word signaled his intent. Ready. Heinrich once again commanded a control rod adjustment. The power gauges crept to 90% in response, and a siren announced the monumental achievement that had seemed impossible prior to the discovery of perithnium. Await stability and set the load balancers, commanded Heinrich. From now on the 90% power level would be maintained through automated control rod adjustment. With critically such a fine line, no human would be able to react quickly enough to avert a full-scale disaster. Dr. Malberg pushed the lever forward, locking it in the open position. The reactor power readings dropped temporarily before the load balancer automatically adjusted the control rods to compensate. Heinrich, ever the cautious, moved his hand to the manual scram control. He may be able to make a difference, but he also knew it was now down to fate. They had done all they could. As the power flowed to Die Glocke, the rings jolted and jumped into moving, slowly at first as the magnetic fields were building. As their speed increased, an unexpected electric blue aurora started to develop in the immediate vicinity of Die Glocke. Starting from a few meters directly above, the aurora fell like a shroud around Die Glocke until it was completely obscured from direct view. Only a shimmering impression of it could be seen. Both Heinrich and Dr. Malberg were mesmerized by the view before them. What is happening, sir? Asked Heinrich. I don't really know, Heinrich, but I feel it is the future, smiled Dr. Malberg in response.